Hello, I'm Ron Rumney. Alongside me are partners Andrew Ewald and Dalton Kille. You've seen many things in the news with Libya's civil war, but do you know what really happened and how it affected the petroleum industry? Today, we are going to talk about the location of Libya, the history of Libya, focusing on the change of power mainly, the conflict and how it began, oil, the light sweet crude and proven reserves, natural gas, the proven reserves and export rates, production, the numbers of barrels per day in oil and natural gas, the companies, the international and national oil companies of Libya, and refining, exactly how much do they refine. On this slide, you see a map of Libya. As you can see, it is near the Mediterranean Sea and bordered by many countries, one of them being the country of Egypt. It is a very arid country, composed of mainly desert land. Underneath the desert land lie many different types of sedimentary rock layers, which are home to many different hydrocarbons. This is important because petroleum products are the main export of Libya. The transfer of power in Libya plays a big part in the history leading up to the civil war in Libya. On September 1st, 1969, Colonel Muammar Gaddafi, the bottom image, with the help of a force, overthrew the monarch Idris al-Sinosel, the top image. Gaddafi made himself the all-ruling dictator of Libya, taking over all of Libya's companies. He created a direct democracy which restricted any citizens from doing anything against the government or they would be killed. The civil war in Libya started when the city of Benghazi, the circled image on the map, refused to produce the oil that Gaddafi required and demanded. This action started the upspark of the civil war. Many different nations contributed to helping the rebels with ending the regime of Muammar Gaddafi. The United States supplied arms to the rebels through allies Saudi Arabia and Qatar. Britain and France worked alongside the United Nations Security Council to make Libya a no-fly zone. Egypt contributed by sending some troops to help. All these movements led to the end of the regime of Colonel Muammar Gaddafi.
Libya has the highest proven oil reserves in Africa. It has even more proven oil reserves than Nigeria. Libya is known for its light, sweet crude oil, which is easily refined due to low sulfur content. It has even been known to cost less than $1 a barrel to refine at times. While Libya only accounts for 2% of the world's oil output, it accounts for up to 15% of the world's light crude oil output. The economy of Libya is heavily centered around the petroleum industry, especially oil. Hydrocarbons account for 95% of the country's total exports and 99% of the government's income, with most of its oil and natural gas exports going to Europe. The land in Libya is not conducive to agricultural farming, which causes the country to import 80% of its food in exchange for the exported oil and natural gas. Libya has the 7th largest proven natural gas reservoirs in the world, with 1.495 trillion cubic meters of natural gas, and possibly double that, still not discovered. The natural gas in Libya is a great resource to the country. The government of Libya plans to take advantage of it by switching from oil to natural gas as the main source of electricity for the country. This freed up domestic oil would then be exported for more profits.
At its peak capacity, Libya can produce around 3 million barrels of light sweet crude per day. Before fighting erupted in 2011, Libya was producing roughly 1.8 million barrels per day. However, after the recent civil war, the vast majority of oil production in the country came to a halt. Since then, production has rebounded faster than most expected and is currently at about 1.35 million barrels per day, with the reasonable goal of 1.7 million barrels per day set for the end of this year. Two-thirds of all Libya's crude comes from eastern Libya and the Sirte Basin. One-fourth of Libyan crude comes from the Merzuk Basin in southwestern Libya. The remainder comes from offshore sites. 70% of all oil production in Libya is controlled by the country's national oil company, the National Oil Corporation. All international companies operating in Libya are required to work in joint operation with a subsidiary of the National Oil Corporation. One of the largest of these subsidiaries is the Arabian Gulf Oil Company, which operates alongside companies such as Texaco and BP in the Sirte Basin. At peak capacity, the Arabian Gulf Oil Company produces approximately 400,000 barrels per day, though is currently producing below this level. Another large oil company operating in the Sirte Basin is the Waha Oil Company, a joint operation between the Libyan National Oil Company and American-owned ConocoPhillips, Marathon, and Hess. The Waha Oil Company is currently producing about 300,000 barrels per day, though its peak capacity is at about 350,000 barrels. Spanish Repsol produces alongside the Libyan-based Akakis and the Merzak Basin to produce around 300,000 barrels per day. Like the Waha Oil Company, Repsol and Akakis are currently about 50,000 barrels per day below the maximum capacities. Libya is home to 5 national refineries with a net production capacity of about 378,000 barrels per day. While Libyan crude is light and easily refined, Libyan refineries are inefficient and low-tech. This is primarily due to UN sanctions placed on Libya due to a plane bombing over Scotland. These sanctions ban the sale of refining necessities such as pumps and tanks. Libya's largest refinery, the Ras Lanuf refinery, is usually able to refine 220,000 barrels of crude every day. However, labor strikes as well as power shortages have plagued Ras Lanuf since the war began in February of 2011, and it is currently only able to produce a fraction of this. The Zawiya refinery, near the capital of Tripoli, has not seen as many problems and is processing 120,000 barrels per day, making it Libya's second largest refinery. Libya is also a direct producer and refiner throughout Europe. The National Oil Corporation's overseas branch, Oil Invest, has refineries in Italy, Germany, and Switzerland, and refines 300,000 barrels per day.
Today we have talked about many aspects of Libya, including its location in northern Africa, how Benghazi was one of the first cities to rise up against the dictator Gaddafi, that Libya has the highest proven oil reserves in Africa and mainly produces a light crude oil, also that the petroleum technology in Libya is far behind the rest of the world due to only recently lifted sanctions, that international oil companies can only operate in Libya if they have a joint operation with a national oil company.